It's the Happy Families Podcast.
It's Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day, my love.
Why, thank you.
You're welcome. I don't think that today's podcast episode has very much at all to do with Valentine's Day. We're going to do our best. No, you know what? We're not even going to try to spin it towards Valentine's. We had our Valentine's conversation last week on the podcast. That's enough. Today we're dealing with the big issues. We're dealing with some real situations. For those of you who are new to the Happy Families Podcast, hello and welcome. My name's Dr. Justin Coulson. We really appreciate you being here. I'm here with Kylie, my wife and mum to our 6 children. And our conversation on a Tuesday usually revolves around answering somebody's question. You can email us your questions, podcasts@happyfamilies.com.au. Who are we and why would we be answering your questions? Well, I have a PhD in psychology and have spent the last 20 years learning about how to make families happier and sharing that with other people. I've just finished and submitted my 8th book, which will be on bookshelves in April. I think it's April, maybe May, sometime around then, all about the parenting revolution. And, well, Kylie, you've helped you've helped me to raise our 6 daughters.
I've helped you.
You've helped... I can't believe
I've helped you.
I said that, didn't I? I actually said that.
The other day I was scrolling. Yes, I was scrolling,
Right.
having some brain numb time
Yep.
out. And I came across this song that this woman's written. And it was just such a beautiful depiction.
Is this the one you sent to me about being a good dad?
Yes.
And how much dad helps around the
Yes.
house? All right, so I've just looked it up while you're talking. I've got it because you sent it to me in my messenger. I'm going to play this. It goes for about a minute and a half, but it's worth it.
I did the cooking and the cleaning and the groceries and the laundry, fed the cat and the dog, and someone stole my coffee. Got a gift for your mother that you probably won't like. Paid a bill, wiped her butt, broke up a couple fights. Then I just about lost my mind, cause we both took the kids to the park. And someone said to you, you are such a good dad. You are such a good dad. I woke at 5 a.m. to screaming in the hallway. There was barf in the bed, so another load of laundry. Our kid was crying, so we talked about our feelings. You were sleeping, that's cool. But then you got up and your mom came over and she said, you are such a good dad. You are such a good dad, such a good dad. I did the math time, story time, the pee time, the snack time. I said go to bed just about 1,000,000 times. Then I sat down to write this song and you said, did you notice I mowed the lawn? You are such a good dad. You are such a good dad, such a good dad. You are such a good dad. Oh, such a good dad.
You are literally cracking up about that whole thing.
Oh, look, it's the line where he asks whether
Did
or
you
not I noticed if he'd mowed the lawn. That just gets me every time.
And why, Mrs. Happy Families? Why would that be the funniest line for you in the song? I'm just curious.
After 25 years of marriage, I can't count how many times you may have pointed out the good deeds that you've done for the day and hope that you would get a little bit of extra praise and appreciation.
I don't know how many times I've said, probably every time, did you notice I mowed the lawn? Did you notice I mowed the lawn? I'm such a good dad. Look at how good
did
the
the
lawn looks.
dishes? Hung the washing out.
Hey, us men, we want to be noticed for our nobility.
Yeah.
We want. Gosh. Anyway, that's not the purpose of our podcast today. But thanks for raising it, and there we go. Now,
Well, I'm grateful that you've recognised that I helped you raise our children.
yes, thank you. Now, the question that needs to be answered. I mean, we're halfway through the podcast and we haven't even gotten to the question. So we're going to have to do a really great job for Anna, who has said, my children fight incessantly. It often becomes violent or involves the most hurtful, hateful insults. How do we deal with this without losing our cool ourselves? And Anna's a mum of 3 girls, 9, 14 and 16, and a neurodiverse son who is also 16, ASD, ADHD and depression. So, I mean, the question from Anna is not how do I stop the kids fighting? It's actually how do I deal with it without losing my cool? How do I self-regulate? But there's a couple of things that we need to talk about in relation to this. First of all, I read it and thought like, I felt like this was our life. Like I'm the parenting expert. I've written all the books, but the kids still fight. In fact, the secret to stopping sibling rivalry is to not have siblings. And if you have siblings, you can rest assured that there will be fighting. I think there's another thing that I've made mention of this previously on the podcast, but I'll mention it again. The idea that our children will always get along is just an unhelpful expectation. And the reason I say that is because as an adult, how old were you before you finally began to get along with your siblings?
We've talked about this a lot over the time we've been podcasting together, but I guess my concern more is that if there is a lack of contention and fighting within any relationship, then how much are we actually being authentic in how we feel? Because the reality is every single one of us is individual and we have different likes and dislikes, and we are not going to agree with everything that everybody says.
So it's really about how we navigate those differences. And,
that's right.
And what Anna's saying is the kids are not navigating this well at all.
No, but if there is no wrestle there in any given relationship, then one of us isn't being real. Yes,
and that's my real point. I want to dispel the idea that there is a quick, easy solution for this, because there isn't. I came across a quote. I'm a really big fan of the James Clear newsletter. James Clear, who wrote the book Atomic Habits, he has this newsletter that comes out once a week, and it's really bite-sized chunks of wisdom. And he shared a quote in a recent newsletter. I think it was the one from it was the most recent one. A writer by the name of Jeanette Winterson said this about life, quote, "We live in a society that peddles solutions, whether it's solutions to those extra pounds you're carrying or to your thinning hair or to your loss of appetite, loss of love. We're always looking for solutions. But actually what we're engaged in is a process throughout life during which you never get it right. You have to keep being open. You have to keep moving forward. You have to keep finding out who you are and how you're changing, and only that makes life tolerable." So I guess I share that because I want to dispel the idea that we can turn around and give everybody a solution to how to fix this or how to fix that on a podcast, especially when we've only got 10 or 15 minutes. And it's a time-poor parenting podcast. It's meant to be about quick solutions where we've got them. The reality, though, is that there are things that we can do that can facilitate the process of getting better with conflict in families.
Well, that's it. We're actually not going to stop the conflict. What we're doing is helping our children navigate the conflict in productive ways, as opposed to, in this instance, really hurtful and damaging ways.
It's the Happy Families podcast, the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers. Now, let's talk about some solutions and ways forward with sibling rivalry and conflict. My first major point is that your kids already know. I mean, if you've got kids who are 9 and 14 and 16, they actually know what's expected. You've taught them explicitly. But it's a process of learning.
And you know that they know because they wouldn't actually take this behaviour outside of the home. In any other relationship, they have learnt the art of respectful communication and interactions.
Yeah.
This is done within the safety of their home.
Yep. The second thing that I want to say is just because they know doesn't mean they're going to be good at doing it. It's really hard because high emotions equals low intelligence. When you're on the brink, you need to stop and think. And we don't do that very well at all when we're super emotional.
Well, often the conflict that is in the home has actually not started in the home.
Yeah, sometimes.
There is emotional turmoil throughout their day that they're not able to express. They don't feel safe to express with other people because they know what it means to be respectful and all of those kinds of things, and they don't know how to navigate that conflict simply or effectively outside the home. So they bring that tension and that angst into the home, and then things blow up.
Sometimes, though, it is just a painful sibling, somebody who's being disrespectful to them, and they feel like they need to react and they need to retaliate. So in terms of best ways to respond, first off, we need to teach our kids that they're not thinking straight in a high emotion state. We need to teach them that high emotions equals low intelligence, and that if they're having any kind of interaction, highly emotive interaction with a sibling, it's going to go badly. So something that we've always emphasized with our kids is that you want to have a soft startup. You don't want to launch in with a no, or you're an idiot, or anything like that. You want to start really softly. But secondly, if emotions are high, get out of there. Just deal with it later when everyone's calmed down. Not that that works very often, because they get into victim mode. They get into this mode where they feel like they're justified in doing and saying horrible things to each other because of what the other one did to them.
I had a similar conversation with one of our girls the other day in relation to this. We have 2 children in particular, close in age, and they really are struggling.
A lot
with
of
each
conflict,
other.
yeah.
There's a lot of conflict.
And they're in that same age group that Anna has mentioned in her email.
But what I've noticed time and time again is that every interaction, they actually both do. They both choose to be the victim. And in choosing to be the victim, they actually stay in the situation because then the behaviour that is hurtful to them continues. It then justifies them in being angry and reacting in the way that they want to.
And becoming the aggressor.
And the cycle keeps perpetuating and things keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah, so I call this the vicious circle, right? Somebody does something to you, you feel lousy, so you feel now justified in doing something to them because of what they did to you. But because now you've done that to them, they feel justified in doing something to you because they're not seeing themselves as being the catalyst. In fact, maybe you did something to them and you don't know about it, and that's why they were doing what they were doing to you anyway. So we get into this vicious circle.
And the self-justification takes over and no one is seeing clearly. It's amazing how much we choose to live in a state of misery when one simple act would actually remove us from that environment.
And that act is usually...
Walk away.
Walk away, yeah.
Walk away.
We'll deal with this later when we're not emotional. And the other thing that strikes me as fascinating, and you can talk to the kids about this, Anna, is what are you fighting about? Like literally most of us, whether we're adults or kids, are fighting about pretty much nothing. It's this perceived slight. It's this tiny little thing. Now, granted, sometimes it is actually a big thing, but more often than not, it's essentially nothing that we're fighting about. But we get so caught up in our self-justification and in our victimhood.
And our self-righteousness.
That we decide that we need to make the other person pay for what they've done. And we take our victim mentality and turn it into, I'm going to lash out. I'm feeling weak. I'm feeling vengeful. I'm feeling like I'm justified in doing whatever I want. So what do we do instead? As a parent, trying to deal with this in the moment just never works. So keeping our cool is critical. That means that we take a big deep breath. We ask ourselves, what would I do if somebody else was watching right now? So my favourite strategies are what we call psychological distancing or self-distancing. And this is where we create some space between us and the situation. Sometimes we have to be in the situation, so we create the space by, imagining that somebody is watching us, literally. Like, I can't tell you how many parents have said, I just imagine that Dr. Justin Coulson is watching me in the living room while I'm having this interaction with the kids. And if that helps you, you're going to be a better parent, right? Imagine that you're in a public place. Imagine that you're somewhere where you don't want to be seen to be at your worst. You need to be seen to be at your best. The second psychological distancing strategy that I recommend is when you channel your inner mental mentor. Think about somebody that you know that does this stuff really well and just try to be them for the next 30 seconds while you're interacting with your child. Don't be you, be them. And the third idea is just try to create space temporarily by thinking, if we were talking about this in an hour, how would it be different to how we're talking about it right now? And then you might just step in and say, all right, guys, we're not going to even talk about this right now because everyone's really emotional and high emotions equals low intelligence. We're going to say something dumb that we regret. So let's just go to different rooms. Let's just get out of each other's face.
So you've got to go to your corner.
I guess so. And in an hour or in a day or in a week, we're going to sit down and we're going to work out what's going on. And we're going to problem solve solutions. When it comes to that problem-solving process, what you're really wanting to do is say, how do you feel? How does your sister or your brother feel? How do I feel? How's the family feel? What's the culture that we're creating? What's the culture that we want? There's obviously a gap. What do we do about it? And it's that kind of problem-solving that we bring the kids in on when they're not emotional.
What actually really blew me away when I was having this conversation with one of our girls the other day was just how readily she could see outside of the moment how she was contributing to the problem. But in the moment, we think it's the other person's fault.
Perfect.
And I was actually really proud of her that she could step back and recognize that she actually plays a significant part in it and there are things that she could do differently. And so are we going to stop the conflict in our home? Never. I don't think it's possible. But continuing to have these kinds of conversations with our children outside of the moment, where they're able to recognize the part they play in it, but also feel that we're on their side, that we're not an enemy, that we're not blaming them, that we recognize that this is really hard and that we can sympathize and empathize with them, but help them to, with some psychological distance, work out ways that they can navigate this better next time.
Yeah, recognising that there's no one-size-fits-all solution, and no matter what you come up with, they're going to get emotional, they're going to forget everything that they've talked about, and when we're under pressure and when we're angry, we revert to our most practiced habit, which sometimes is yelling and fighting and screaming and saying unkind things, which means that we need to rehearse it again and again and again. Like, this is a process. Anna, we hope that's a helpful response to your question, and anyone else who's dealing with some sibling conflict and rivalry and challenges. The Happy Families podcast is produced by Justin Rulon from Bridge Media. Craig Bruce is our executive producer, and for more information about making your family happier, you can visit us at happyfamilies.com.au. Oh, and happy Valentine's Day.